Hello everyone and welcome back. This video is going to be about modifying element text. In other words, how to change the text inside of things. So right now this says this is my awesome title and I might want to change that to something else. So in order to do that, remember our 2 steps to modifying any content on a web page is to select it and then modify it. So the first thing we have to do is select it. So let's just go ahead and change my title. This is my awesome title. So that is, if we inspect our page, we can see that that is an H1. It does not have a class or an ID applied to it, so we're just going to select it with H1. So let's just query selector it. Const title equals document dot get, or let's do query selector. Query selector and then H1, that will select the first H1, and now we have title. And if I do title, you can see that it did indeed select that. Clear our console. And there are a few different ways that you can change the text inside of a HTML element. This first one is the most common and the one that you should use whenever possible. This should be your default choice. If it doesn't work and you need some advanced functionality, then use one of the others, but always go to this one first because it's much more secure than the others. The name of this is text content, and you just call your element. So whatever your element is, in our case it's title, but it could be anything, whatever that HTML element is, title.text content. You see it's camel case, and you'll see right now it's already telling me what it is, what that content is. But you can set it equal to whatever you want, and it will update the text inside that element. So now I have title, you can see it's an H1, and it is whatever I want. If I call text content, you can see that it is indeed whatever I want. Note that text content contains all of the content inside that element, including nested elements. So const list equals document dot query selector, and that is a ordered list. So you notice it's right there. So if I do list dot text content, you'll see that it's a lot more than just that. You'll see that it's got all 4 of these games inside of it. And if you look at it before I hit enter, you can see that it's got the new line with a bunch of spaces, so it tried to preserve some of that formatting inside of there. So that's just something to keep in mind. Don't use text content, generally speaking, on parent elements. Only use it on elements that don't have any children on them, is generally speaking the way you're going to use that, unless you want to remove whatever's inside there. So if I do list.textContent equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it gets rid of all of those elements. And if I inspect it now, you can see that my OL has no children. It does not have those list items inside of it anymore. So let's refresh our page so we can get everything back. Another thing to note is you cannot use HTML tags when you are using text content, like you can't add them. So let's say I wanted to add a link to my title. Const title equals document dot query selector H1. Oops. And now I have that title. I cannot do title dot text content equals here's a link. A href equals I cannot do this. That's what it does. Text content strips out all of your HTML abilities. It means that you cannot embed HTML tags, and this is by design. This is on purpose. This is the main reason that text content is a lot more secure than the other options. The next one we're going to talk about is inner HTML, which does allow you to do this, but it's a lot less secure because of that. Because it allows interpreted HTML tags, people can do all kinds of fancy cross-site scripting and things, so you should always use text content whenever possible. Whenever you can, use text content. If you can't, it's okay to use inner HTML, and we'll talk about that in a second, but whenever possible, use text content. Refresh our page, you get a nice blank slate. Now we're going to talk about inner HTML. Inner HTML lets you do the same thing, except it also includes any nested HTML tags. So if I get my list again, const list equals document.query selector. That's an ordered list. I have list. And you can see that it's this list. If I do list.inner HTML, notice HTML is all caps. Put that out, you'll see that it does include this on the end. and list.innerHTML equals, and I could put in a different li, maybe something like replaces the original list, li. I forgot to put it as a string. Silly me. I have to put it inside of quotes. Boom. And you see it replaces the original list and it preserves the formatting. So if now I look at, come down here, and I look at list.innerHTML, you can see it has just that. It includes the HTML. Only use this if you have nested HTML that you need to preserve. Only use this if you have to, basically, because it enables cross-site scripting to be a lot easier if anyone's trying to attack your website. So just keep that in mind. We're going to talk about cross-site scripting later on in the course, but for now, just keep that in mind that it is a problem that innerHTML makes easier for people to do. And one more thing I wanted to talk about before we go much further is go ahead and get used to making changes in line instead of saving them to a variable first and then making them. So for example, the way that we've been doing this up to now to make it a little bit easier to understand is first we've been selecting, so const title equals document.querySelector h1. So we've been first selecting, and then we've been modifying. Title.text content equals modified. Instead, it's much better, much more efficient both on the browser as well as in your code to do that all in line, to do it all in one statement. Document.querySelector, if I could type, h1, and then instead of saving that to a variable, just go ahead and modify your content. Text content equals cool deal. So instead of having 2 lines of code, you're now just writing 1 line of code. You are not creating new constants and polluting your namespace. You are simply grabbing the element here and then changing it. So we select right here and we modify as the same line, as the same command. This is both more efficient with your code because it's 1 line instead of 2. It's also more efficient in the browser because it's only making 1 call to the DOM instead of 2. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to help. Thanks.